As she finished her anchor, she wasn't surprised to see that she couldn't store it away as it refused to enter her inventory. Even if she cleared out everything she had to make room for it, there was something blocking it. After all, it would be rather unfair to carry the anchor around in an untargetable space. However, she was already lucky in that she could move the anchor around on her floating city, so she couldn't complain much. Making a platform for the anchor so that she could move it around for now, Shiro cracked her neck and yawned. Ugh, I haven't worked for 24 hours in a row for quite a while now. I need a shower. Shiro muttered with a frown. Waving her hand, she created a small house by the side with her nanobots for now and took a shower. Making a bit of food with the stuff left in her inventory, Shiro finished off with a cup of juice. Sitting in her house made out of nanobots, Shiro decided to sleep for a bit. Watching all of this, Nimue's smile twitched as she had just seen Shiro create a house, have a shower, eat some food, and even sleep in comfort despite being in a place they don't know much about. But the fact that she was even able to accomplish it with her nanobots was what shocked her the most, as it was way too handy. Who the hell just casually creates a house with all the appliances ready? But compared to the other things that she had done, this was nothing. Her main anger was that she had actually tampered with the anchor, and it was successful, thanks to the nature of divine energy. Taking a few deep breaths to calm herself, Nimue sighed and decided to rest herself. There was no point in getting annoyed, since Shiro would just relapse. After all, despite wanting to do the anchor properly, she decided that a coin toss would be a great way to determine what she should do, rather than logically assess the situation. Seeing Nimue give up, for the nth time today, Addie decided to walk up to her and pull her shirt. "Don't be sad. Mom is like that," Addie called out as Nimue smiled softly and patted his head. "Don't worry, I know what your mom is like. I've been with her for a while now," Nimue said while picking him up. "But your mom seems to not care about my mental health, so she keeps trying crazy stuff like this." Nimue shook her head. "But it was good, wasn't it? If Mum did things like everyone else, she wouldn't be Mum." Addie tilted his head as Nimue paused at his logic. He was correct. If Shiro had done things like everyone else, she would just be one in the masses rather than becoming a demigod. She would have become cannon fodder, to put it bluntly, and maybe it's her desire to not be controlled which led her to a path where she would try things that are out of the norm. Even her attack towards a certain weak point wasn't seen often by fighters, as it is rather crude, but if Shiro didn't try these out of the norm options, she would just be a common mage. "You're right. If your mum didn't do crazy things, she wouldn't be your mum. She wouldn't have found me, Izuel, or you." Nimue chuckled as Addie nodded his head. Bringing him back to Izuel, Nimue couldn't help but feel as though both the mother-son pair were therapists or something. Shiro got rid of Nantian's worries while Addie got rid of her worries. She would say that she's reached enlightenment and not care anymore, but that was bullshit. If Shiro performs more crazy acts, she's still going to want to flip the entire mana realm upside down. Asking Shiro to behave herself was impossible. While Nimue brought Addie back to Izuel, Shiro was currently sleeping soundlessly as she was rather exhausted from crafting the anchor. But despite her tiredness, she was still keeping herself in a light sleep just in case danger comes her way. After resting for 4 to 5 hours, Shiro sat up and stretched her body. Feeling rather refreshed, Shiro could sense that Nantian and Isilia were coming back, hence why she cut her rest to around 4 hours or so. Opening the door to her house, she could see the two walking towards the peak and gave them a small wave. "I didn't expect you to build a house." Nantian chuckled as Shiro shrugged. "Well, after I finished making the anchor there, I needed a rest, so I made myself a house." Shiro smiled while gesturing at the anchor that was being protected by her nanobots right now. "That's just like you, ha ha ha. Anyways, we found something quite interesting if you want to check it out with us. We haven't explored deeply just yet since it's been more than a day, but if we can find a safe place to put the anchor, the 3 of us can have a look at this place that we found inside the mountain." Isilia smiled. "Oh? Sure, let me just camouflage the anchor." Waving her hand, nanobots started to thread together as the anchor was soon hidden from sight. Snapping her finger, the nanobots turned invisible along with the anchor, so that it seemed like the peak of the mountain was empty except for the house. "Do you two want to rest for a bit first before we go?" Shiro asked. "It's fine. We've already taken a long rest on the way here." Nantian smiled. "Fair enough. Let me get rid of the house then." Shiro nodded since she kept the house just in case. The two needed more time to rest. Snapping her finger, the house crumbled down and disappeared. "Let's go." Shiro smiled. Making their way down the mountain, they showed Shiro where they had found the cave entrance. Immediately noticing the spike up in mana density, Shiro raised her eyebrows. "I got 3 vials of the mana on the walls so that you can see if there is anything special with them," Nantian said, handing her 3 vials. Looking at the vials, it reminded Shiro of the mana potions, but it was much clearer. It was colored a clear light blue which flickered with a silver light. Swirling it slightly, she couldn't see any changes. Tracing her fingers along the wall, she looked at the liquefied mana on her fingers and furrowed her brows. Let me give it a scan while we're making our way through the cave then. Snapping her fingers, nanobots appeared around her and formed a belt with a box on the side. Placing the vials into the box, she started to analyze them as they made their way through the caves. With the liquid mana on the wall, the cave was strangely lit as there was no need for any sources of light. There were several twists and turns. But Nantien and Isilia led the way so that they didn't waste any time. The further they progressed, the stranger things became. Broken pieces of the cave would float around as if gravity didn't affect them. Faint, illusionary pink tethers would stretch between rocks, which would sway to the wind. Orbs of light would magnetize towards one another before shattering apart into more orbs once they collide. As for the vials that Nantien had given her, it was actually natural mana potions that were 100% pure, had no impurities, and would increase your mana capacity slightly every time you used it. Plus, it would also regenerate your mana back to full upon use. While the increase to the capacity was helpful, it was rather useless for Shiro, Nantien, and Isilia, since their mana capacity was huge already. However, what was helpful was that it refilled your mana back to full. For Shiro, whose attacks cost large percentages, this would be extremely helpful as fights at their level are very fast-paced. She couldn't wait a whole minute before casting the next spell, or else she could die, so the fact that she could drink potions that refilled her mana back to full with no backlash was handy. So while they were progressing through the caves, Shiro already had her nanobots harvest the mana into vials so that she could use them later. Continuing through the caves, Shiro was surprised at how deep this went since they had to go down a few stairs made from the rocks around them. At this point, the mana density made a river of flowing mana which could be seen floating around them. It lit up the area ever so slightly so that they could see their foothold but nothing else. Shiro did try to make a light source, but it seemed to be blocked by a magical darkness that prevented light from passing through. Stepping down the floating stones, which defied gravity while rives of mana flowed around them, Shiro was curious about what this place actually was for such a phenomenon to occur. "We're not far now," Nantien said, as they had been traveling for a while now. Their speed would have been much faster, but they had to watch their step on floating rocks. And it was also hard to fly in the previous location, with it being in a cave. Right now, with the darkness surrounding them, it was as if they were in the void with nothing around them. This time, Shiro didn't tamper with the flowing mana river at all, since they didn't know where it was floating to or what it could possibly be powering. Glancing back, the stones that they stepped on gradually disappeared in the darkness. For all they know, they could just be walking on the stop, and the stones were moving to give them a sense of progression. With them not being able to see anything or send their senses out since it was being interfered by the mana, it was hard to get a picture of where they were going. But since Nantien and Isilia had already passed this part, Shiro knew that there was an end, and that they weren't in a strange trap. After a while of walking, Shiro could finally see a hint of light as the flow of the mana river started to fade out. Hopping off the floating stones and standing on normal ground, Shiro glanced back and noticed that the path was still blocked by darkness. All they could see were floating stones leading up, which soon disappeared. Clicking her tongue, Shiro found it rather annoying that she couldn't get a sense of the area, but there was nothing she could do. Looking forward, she saw visages of sea, creatures that floated through the air as if they were underwater. With her mastery over souls, Shiro could tell that they were pieces of the soul, but strangely enough, they were given free movement as if this was the underworld. Normally, the soul would be sent to reincarnation after leaving the body for a while. So the fact that these creatures were still around seemed miraculous to her. Compared to the previous cave system, the walls here were much more special as the cave was illuminated by a spectral light that radiated from the soul shards. Seeing that neither Isilia or Nantien said anything, Shiro understood that this wasn't the end yet, but she could see their confusion now. The fact that a giant space like this could even fit in the mountain was surprising. Despite not being able to get a grasp of their surroundings, Shiro did map out the path they had taken, and the space required to fit everything in was bigger than what she could have seen outside. It was either that, or if they punched a wall, they'll reach the outside world. But she didn't want to start destroying everything just yet, without knowing what's going on. Continuing through the spacious cave, which seemed to be a soul aquarium of sorts with the sea, life floating around randomly, Shiro could see an exit of sorts. Stepping through the exit, Shiro noticed that it was formed from two large triangular pillars which seemed like someone had cut a quarter of a pyramid off and placed them near one. Another. Glancing back, the cave system could still be seen, so Shiro sighed in relief. Feeling a cool breeze on her skin, she looked forwards and saw a dark sky with pulses of turquoise light flickering through the clouds. Ashen trees that extended high into the sky with no leaves surrounded them as their branches lined up to indicate a pathway of sorts. Past the trees, a veil of mist blocked them from peering beyond what is allowed, and probing it with mana yielded the same result as the other attempts. Following along the path that was indicated by the trees, Shiro could see large stone mountains which faintly resembled clawed hands reaching towards the sky. The main body of the hand was the mountain, as the peaks looked like the fingers. Ranawayuse, above these mountains, was an opening in the dense clouds where faint blue light swirled in a circle. It was similar to what would happen should she invoke her Requiem of the Dead, but this time it was less creepy without butterflies, coming out to consume your soul. On the path towards the mountains, the trees thinned out as large black monoliths protruded from the ground. They weren't standing. Upright, as most of them leaned at an angle like they were knocked over or buried poorly. Cracks could be seen as runic symbols of unknown origins littered across the surface. They seemed to flicker with a very faint blue light, which caused Shiro to imagine what they would have looked like in the past. Perhaps the symbols would shine with light and power a barrier of sorts. Unfortunately, she didn't know, as the runes were unfamiliar, and even trying to decode them brought her no results. As they exited the forest and entered the graveyard of monoliths, they could see floating rocks in the sky with blue crystals embedded in them. The crystals had a very faint tether, which faded away as Shiro recognized them to be giant mana crystals that were much bigger than her body. Walking through the graveyard of monoliths, broken statues and bones became common as the statues resembled hooded Grim Reapers who held a scythe. Seeing the carvings of what seemed to be fake mana circuits, Shiro realized that these statues of Grim Reapers were actually golems that had been destroyed. Walking past the statues, swirling orbs of fire that were colored blue and purple could be seen floating around as large gates, similar to that of the Japanese torii gates, pathed their way towards the mountains. The gates were broken as many could not form a proper arch. Similar to the cave before, there were soul shards of animals with glowing horns that left a faint trail whenever they moved. Their eyes were small balls of blue fire which shimmered in the dark. They seemed to walk around without noticing the party at all. Every time they passed one of the gates, more seemed to be revealed, as the gates almost acted as keys to revealing. The illusion. Passing one gate revealed statues that couldn't be seen earlier. They were undamaged, but they weren't golems, and were only there for aesthetic reasons. Passing another gate revealed broken chains, which connected the gates together. Passing through all of the gates, Shiro assumed that all of the illusion had been broken, since they were now in front of a giant, desolate city with broken walls and empty houses. Large craters could be seen around the city, as many of the houses were completely destroyed. In place of the giant hand-like mountains was now a large castle with damaged floating chambers that connected to the main body with a bridge, glancing. To the left, a giant rusted sword was embedded deep to the ground as the edges were damaged. Behind the sword, however, was a line of destruction which cut through tens of houses and left a deep scar in the land that this city was on. "We're almost there," Nantian said as they entered the castle. What Shiro didn't expect was a hollowed castle that was completely devoid of anything except for a single platform in the center. It seemed to be a large broken sundial with neon blue runic inscriptions. Pieces of this device were left around the room as they were severely damaged. Walking up to the sundial, Nantian placed his hand in the center before moving it anti-clockwise. The floor beneath them suddenly opened up to reveal a whirlpool of mana as Shiro received a notification on her system. Entrance to the beyond has been discovered. "Is this what you wanted to show me?" Shiro asked while glancing at the mana portal that had opened up beneath them. We haven't entered yet, since we don't know what's on the other side. Plus, I haven't read anything about a place known as the Beyond, so it's a complete mystery for me." Nantian nodded with a serious expression. "Me too. In all my time of research, I haven't heard of anything that could link to this portal leading to the Beyond. Do you have an idea, Shiro?" Isilia asked, since Shiro was essentially a computer. Everything she had seen is stored away. Let me check." Shiro furrowed her brows. Closing her eyes, she tried to remember anything that has to do with Beyond, but her search yielded no beneficial results. "I've got nothing either. Let me see if I can send something over then." Shiro furrowed her brows, snapping. Her fingers, a drone appeared in front of her. Controlling it, she had it fly down into the portal, but the moment it got close, a whip of mana shattered it apart instantly. "That's concerning." Shiro frowned. "Maybe we should mark this place down and explore it later. We've got more important matters such as making the city and moving the anchor," Isilia reminded as Shiro agreed with her. Even though she might have messed around with the anchor, moving to a different place with a portal was not a choice she could make on a whim. There was the chance that they could just be barred from coming back, so it was rather risky to hop in without thought. Plus, she was not able to scout out the portal at all. I can wait a few months for my skill to come off cooldown and ask the system about the Beyond. By then, the new age would have started, but it should be fine. We should focus on the matter at hand," Shiro said after a moment of thought. Let's make a mark here first, then, so that we can return when we need to. While we're here, do we also want to look around for a bit to see if we can get anything useful? Nantian asked, since this is a city, while it is destroyed, there's a chance that something useful might be scattered around. I think we can do that since we're not exactly traveling to a different place entirely. Isilia smiled, nodding her head. Shiro waved her hand and created a mark in the corner where the portal wouldn't destroy it immediately. I'll send my nanobots around so that they can search too. Should we stay 1 hour maximum and then we go back? Shiro asked. After coming to an agreement, Shiro stepped out of the castle and snapped her fingers. Suddenly, thousands of tiny drones started to form in the air as Shiro activated them all and had them search the city. While this was happening, both Nantian and Isilia decided to manually look around for a bit, while Shiro's drones did their thing. Searching for an hour, they unfortunately couldn't find anything that was useful, since most of the things have already been plundered. The most precious thing in this strange world within the mountain was probably the materials scattered around the place, such as the floating rocks or the river of mana. Even now, her nanobot drones near the entrance have been harvesting the vials endlessly, as it seemed to continuously replenish thanks to the density. During this time, they had also tried to find the source of the mana, but unfortunately, they couldn't find anything as the tracks seemed to halt within the city. There was a good chance that the source was in the beyond, but they didn't want to take that risk. Once the search was over, Shiro opened up a portal back to the top of the mountain. Right then, the plan now is to make the best flying fortress. Hopefully it's self-sustaining, and I can move the anchor to the spirit capital where everyone can change locations. Plus, I'm also thinking of making the mana potions exclusive to the city. With the rate of which the mana is replenishing here, the flow of completely pure mana potions shouldn't run out anytime soon. Shiro smiled as Nantian raised his eyebrow, before nodding her head. Ranawes, with how things are going to be, they'll need to have a strong army since there were only so many people around. If they could cultivate a strong army, they'll be able to carry out more tasks during the New Age. Plus, depending on what happens, they might even be able to make an elite unit where Shiro can bestow her skills onto them so that they can carry out the more important tasks. In terms of standing, they'd be lower than Lyrica and the others. Plus, with how her nanobots work, she could easily create thousands of training capsules, drones, as well as training manuals with techniques for her army. Efficiency-wise, no one could defeat Shiro when it came to manually cultivating an army. Anyways, we got a few days to burn, so let's rest for now. Shiro smiled as she created another house. This time it was slightly bigger, so that it could accommodate everyone. Hey, you're not making the city now? Isilia asked curiously. Nope. I'm going to wait until my demigod form comes off cooldown. That way I can generate more divine energy. Once that happens, I can create a much stronger flying fortress. Shiro grinned, since she had been formulating a few blueprints in her mind that took advantage of the properties with divine energy. Quite a few of the blueprints couldn't be accomplished, but with the addition of divine energy, it will be sorted easily. Plus, the anchor also generated divine energy for her, so she had plenty to spare so long as she entered demigod form while being near her anchor. After 2 more days of waiting, she'd have the most powerful city she can construct. Plus, she also needed some time to test out if she could actually make the entire thing work with a few experiments. Seeing as there wasn't much else to do, the 3 of them decided to rest at the house for 2 days, as Isilia helped Shiro experiment with a few of her ideas. While the 2 were experimenting, Nantian was making new spells so that he could make the most out of this free time. With Shiro being near the divine anchor during these 2 days, she didn't struggle for divine energy as she was able to finalize quite a few of the blueprints she had in mind. As for Isilia, she was shocked at the versatility of divine energy, since what Shiro was doing shouldn't be possible with just mana. On the 2nd day, the moment her skill refreshed, the 3 of them stood outside of the house as she cleared it away since it was no longer needed. Taking a deep breath, Shiro visualized how the city would look and wondered if she should merge it with the mountain and move it away with her or just leave it here for now. Since the mountain had that strange space within it, there's a chance that it could be ruined if she's not careful. If she didn't know about this, she would have taken the mountain with her, since it was too precious. Are you 2 ready? Shiro smiled. Seeing the 2 nod their heads, Shiro grinned before activating her skill. Once again, a pillar of light shot into the sky as mana clouds swarmed towards the light. With her body now overflowing with divine energy along with her divinity, Shiro soared into the sky and pushed her palms out. Boom! Expanding out in an instant, stacks upon stacks of Tier 7 magic circles were created as swarms of nanobots appeared in the air and blocked out the sky from sight. Waving her hand, the anchor flew up towards the center of the swarm as the nanobots converged towards it. Clasping her hands together, another Tier 7 magic circle appeared beneath her as thousands of her strongest guns started to form around the outer edges of the city that was currently being built. Whenever her mana started to get low, Shiro would instantly drink one of the mana potions that brought her mana back to full, since constructing something of this scale, even with divine energy and her mana regeneration, was outside of her capabilities, since everything would collapse the moment she ran out of mana watching. This happened. Isilia couldn't help but imagine that this could be similar to how the gods created worlds. Watching Shiro mesh the nanobots together to form intricate parts was miraculous, as millions of pieces were being formed every second. Seeing the mana that she was using, Isilia couldn't help but pity a certain spirit that was trying to keep her body from collapsing, since she was basically working in overdrive with the amount of mana she was constantly regenerating with the potions. With thousands of hidden weapons as well as connected platforms, their headquarters for the New Age had been completed. Looking at the flying fortress, which seemed as if it wanted to cover the entire world, Nan Tien was speechless, since it was much bigger than what he had expected. Even the mountain paled in comparison when placed next to the fortress. With one main platform and 5 branch platforms around it, the city was armed to the teeth with weapons, barriers, formations, and counterspells. The crystals that could be seen around the city were actually highly compact runes, which made them seem like it was a single solid color. On the main platform, there was a giant tower, which was adorned with golden crests, which pulsed with divine energy. Thanks to the nature of her anchor, divine energy was constantly being circulated through the entire city, and these crests amplified the effects. One of the new additions that Shiro had created within this fortress was a self-sustaining mana domain, which allowed it to float on its own even if the world was suddenly drained of mana. With the divine energy helping the nanobots, she could make this entire city float and functional with a single drop of mana. Never mind the huge reserves that were constantly being stored within this fortress. Aside from the main tower, the center platform was also filled with large empty spaces where buildings could be built. While it may look empty now, Shiro could construct thousands of hidden weapons with a snap of her finger, since this was entirely made from nanobots. She had control over the entire fortress with a single thought. Around the outer edges of the main platform, marble pillars could be seen as golden arches connected them and formed a circlet around the platform. Beneath the arches were bridges that connected to the other platforms, and they were protected by a faint barrier which pulsed in sync with the golden runes on the main tower. Each of the 5 platforms were filled with necessities to sustain itself. Should the world perish, such as a farmland, due to the nature of her anchor, there was a constant guarantee that the harvest would be good, and there were custom models put in place to guarantee this, even if the anchor didn't have special effects. As for transport, Shiro had chambers with teleport marks ready. For example, if there was an ore vein that couldn't be moved easily, Shiro could link it up to a mark that she had set up in the chamber. With the fortress powering itself, she didn't need to manually recharge the marks, so she didn't need to attend to them. Plus, she had already made blueprints in her mind for items that allowed one to open a portal back to this place as an emergency. Plus, with divine energy and the teleport runes that Stanley had shown her, which ignored space seals, it was a guaranteed escape for her followers. There were even models ready to manufacture an enhanced mana pulse bomb that she used during the Shadow Temple trial, since she had more than enough mana to create one. With so many weapons and models in place, attacking this fortress was rather hard. Just in case something did go wrong, though, Shiro had a backup plan. Should all of the barriers around the fortress be destroyed, it is able to create an emergency. Teleport mark and shift itself away from danger. Shifting locations instantly would be especially handy, since there was a specialized mana detonator, which was created using Celestial Path as a base. When it is teleporting, it will unleash a pulse of aura which seals mana for a few moments, and it would delay the enemy slightly, giving it a chance to escape. On top of this, the security placed around the fortress made it so that it was difficult for an assassin class to intrude without being discovered. "So what do you think?" Shiro asked as she had a smile on her face. Despite looking a little pale, thanks to the pressure she had put on her body, she was extremely proud of her creation, since it could also suit people up with the mech suits that were armed with her weapons. Even some of the experimental ideas that she had thought of when she saw the mechs from animes in New York were finalized. If a person wanted a special mech they had seen online, she could create something similar, granted that they gave her enough information. Otherwise, it'll just look like it and not work in the same way. "I don't know what to think about it, since you basically laid the foundations for a whole new civilization." Nan Tien chuckled while glancing at the fortress. "Well, I have to go all out, since this is where the people will live if they decide to follow me. If I can't do my best to guarantee their safety, what kind of queen would I be?" Shiro smiled, since that's her role as a queen. If people wanted to seek shelter, she wouldn't mind helping them, since it wasn't too bothersome for her. Plus, the more people that join, the more power she'll obtain from them, thanks to her role as the queen. With her being recognized as a participant now, she is able to recruit all of the spirits, even though she'll be weakened for a while. The payoff is much better in the long run. Honestly, my main worry about the fortress was space, since the last fortress I saw you make was small compared to this one, but it still destroyed a city. For this, I'd say you can fit around 2 or maybe 3 cities. If anything, I'm worried that it's too much space. Cecilia shrugged. Ranobius. Well, if it's taking too much space, I can always shrink it down whenever. Shiro glanced back at the fortress. Snapping her fingers, the platform started to shrink as the size was reduced by roughly 20%. This'll do for now. I suppose. Once we get the spirits on this, I can enlarge it if there's anything else that's needed, Shiro said as the two nodded their heads. Here's a concern, though. If you teleport this to the spirit capital, won't the humans notice this, since it's rather hard to miss due to its size? Nantian said while glancing up at the fortress. Fufu, I'm glad you asked. Shiro crossed her arms happily as a rune suddenly flashed on the main tower. Despite seeing the fluctuation of mana visually, the two couldn't sense anything as the city slowly disappeared from sight. An illusion which blocks on mana senses by merging its signal with the surroundings. Even though your eyes can see what's going on, your senses can't, hence why it's perfect, since it can hover over a city and no one would notice a thing. Of course, if you decide to fly up, you might just bump into it. Shiro chuckled and launched a stray fireball up. Suddenly the fireball exploded in midair, but the fortress wasn't revealed. The only thing is that it's still present. You can't see it or sense it, but spells and touch still work on it. So if it rains, well, fuck then. Shiro shrugged before snapping her fingers. Suddenly, it started to rain as the water was just blocked by the fortress. Even though it was invisible, the rain marked an outline of the city. Showing off a few more features, they prepared to make their way back to the spirit capital. Entering the main tower, Nantian was surprised at the internal design since it looked like it came from the future. The amount of information that could be displayed at a single thought was crazy, but what's more impressive was that it was just a small part of what Shiro knew. Sometimes I wonder how your brain works for it to store this much information, and you can just access it with ease. Nantian chuckled as Shiro shrugged. Thanks to the scientists, I suppose. They messed me up, but thanks to that, I'm where I am at today. Shiro laughed as Cecilia was happy to see that Shiro was casual in mentioning her past. Previously, she had always been rather bloodthirsty whenever she thought back to the scientists, since they experimented on her for years without stopping. But seeing Shiro move on made Cecilia feel happy. Arriving at the top of the tower, Shiro snapped her fingers as displays lit up all around them, giving them a full view of surroundings. Activating the magic circle, a giant portal opened up in front of them as the fortress started to move. Soon, the flying fortress disappeared from astral horizons. Ah. Sighing out softly, Samuel massaged his shoulders and sat down. Not too long ago, Shiro had just told him that they should start making preparations for moving, since she had just finished creating the anchor. But when it comes to moving, everyone, it'll take much longer. Roughly around a few weeks or so, and yet Shiro had told me to prepare to move immediately. Before he could even have a proper rest, he heard a soft ping as the earpiece turned on. Samuel, can you hear me? Shiro called out as Samuel sat up. Yes, I can, Your Highness. What do you require? Samuel sat up immediately. Are the preparations complete? Shiro asked as Samuel's smile twitched. I'm sorry, Your Highness, but I was not able to complete it within the time that you have given me, Samuel replied with a sigh. That's a problem. Oh well, are you able to call all of the spirits? I can do something about their houses later. The main thing is that I need them to be gathered in the center, or at least in one place. The center just makes things easier, Shiro asked. I don't know if I can get everyone, but since it's an order by the Queen, I'm sure they'll oblige. Is there any particular reason for it, though? If there is, it'll be easier to convince the masses. There is a reason. I'll be moving them to their new home via large-scale teleportation, I suppose. The main thing that's worrying me is their possessions. I can duplicate their homes without any problem. Shiro sighed. But since this is going to take a while, I don't mind if you take your time with this, since the city isn't going anywhere. My main concern is keeping it hidden, but I can hide it underwater for now. I'll set up a barrier so that it doesn't get flooded. Just get everyone ready to move, and I'll show myself at the capital in a few moments, without giving Samuel a chance. To reply, the earpiece cut itself out as Samuel stood in place, dumbfounded for a moment before sighing. However, even if Shiro's requests were a bit on the unreasonable side, he knew that she wouldn't ask them to do something for no reason. Even though he had a few doubts about her teleporting everyone, he set the doubts aside for now, and let her actions speak for themselves. Stretching his body, he immediately called the other elders, and had everyone gather towards the center. With the amount of people they had, a few would need to sit on the rooftops, but this was fine for now. Plus, even though this was the spirit capital, there weren't many humanoid spirits around since they were essentially refugees, if they weren't. Oppressed or forced to flee, the amount of spirits in the capital would be much higher. Sending out word that this was a royal decree where Shiro would show them to their new home and that everyone was required, Samuel left out details on what she could be doing since he wasn't sure, aside from the fact that she was going to teleport them all. After around an hour or so, most of the spirits were gathered around the plaza, but they weren't able to check how many had actually arrived. I'd say about 60% have attended. Not too bad for an unreasonable request. I wanted people to come here so that they're not teleported in the middle of doing something, but this'll do for now. Ranobisa! Crying out in surprise, Samuel turned to his side and saw that Shiro was standing there nonchalantly, while glancing towards the crowd. Well, I'll bring the 60% of people away first. She shrugged before glancing back at Samuel, who was looking at her with shock. You feeling okay? Why do you look so surprised? Shiro asked curiously. I am sorry. About that, Your Highness. Shall we address the masses about what you want to do? Samuel asked as he was shocked at how suddenly she had appeared. He didn't sense any fluctuations besides him, so the moment he saw her, he was fearful of what she could have done if she was an assassin. Men, I should. Both Nantian and Azilia are waiting, so I'll keep the speech short. I'm not one for speeches, or something along those lines. I'll probably just say something like, I'm sure you're curious as to why I called you here or something. Shiro shrugged before walking forward. Before Samuel could stop her, she had already cleared her throat. I'm sure all of you have questions about why I've called you here. I'm not sure how much Samuel has said, but I shall tell you our next goals. I have acquired, or rather constructed our new home that will allow us to live properly without cowering in small reclusive areas like this. Our new home is safe and secure. It is armed with weapons to fend off our enemies. It's bigger than most cities, and I can guarantee your safety. I know it sounds unbelievable, the fact that I have the power to construct something like this. However, know this. I, your queen, will not lie to you. My race who has been oppressed, I will do everything in my power to stop the oppression placed upon us by the previous races due to the fact that you didn't have a leader. The times that you needed to hide are behind you. You will receive the power to strike back at your enemies yourself. If you do not seek battle, I will protect you as the queen. All those that wish to fight back, it is my promise that I will arm you with the best weapons and armor to keep you safe. I will not force you to fight, as I am not a believer or forcing actions upon you. Even if I have to stand alone on the front lines, I will defend you to the best of my abilities, and my first act will be gifting you the mightiest of fortresses that I can construct. With my power, I will gift you both a home and an instrument of power against our enemies. If you fight, I will gift you with techniques, training manuals, weapons, and armor that you have never seen before. Shiro cried out as her aura flared up. Hearing her shout, quite a few of the guards that were patrolling felt emotional, as they have always hated the feeling of fleeing from the enemies. Imaging a scene of fighting on the front lines as their own queen supported them, caused them to grip their weapons harder. Slamming her hands together, a giant Tier 6 magic circle appeared around them as the spirits that were gathered in the plaza felt weightless for a moment before realizing that they were currently floating in above the sea. I present to you our new home, Asheria. Shiro smiled before snapping her fingers. Suddenly, a glorious city hovering in the water presented itself before the masses, as the size of the city was much bigger than what everyone had expected. Even though quite a bit of the land was bare, they could see that houses were being constructed by nanobots every second. I will offer you each a scanner to mark your land, and it will be reconstructed on the fortress, so you do not need to worry about not having a home. The scanner will also have you register some of your details, so that it will mark you down as a citizen of our new city. Once you are registered, you may ask the drones or use the computers around the city to search for anything you may require. If you don't know the way to a friend's house, or you don't know the way to the markets, you may ask the drones and they'll show you the way. There are job centers for you, so if you choose to stay within the safety of the fortress, you can still contribute through jobs such as farming. There will be drones to assist you should you require help. Schools will be constructed and libraries will be added. I shall send everyone the details once we have proved every spirit to this city. I'm sure many of you may have concerns, but I assure you I will answer everything you require. Those that don't want to migrate don't need to, and anything that you find lacking in this city will be attended to. Once you have registered, you can offer suggestions to the AI, and they will mark down your request. The move will happen over the course of the next few weeks to months, so you do not need to rush. As Shiro was talking to the masses, Samuel could only stand in silence as he looked at the majestic fortress that floated on the sea. Balling his hands into fists, he could already imagine the spirit race launching a retaliation towards those that oppressed them before. Tilting his head back, he looked up at the sky and closed his eyes. Your sacrifices for everyone have not been wasted. We have received the best queen we could ask for, and we will avenge your deaths, Samuel thought. In his imagined all those that have died up to this point. Looking at Shiro, he swore in his heart that he will support her with everything he could to offer. Teleporting the spirits back to the capital, Shiro's first task was to distribute the scanners so that the spirits could recreate their homes and register on the fortress. Setting up a few stalls with drones to help distribute the scanners, Shiro called for all the elders and showed them around the fortress. There wasn't much need in terms of manual management, but it was still helpful. There were jobs they could do in the main tower, such as controlling where the next destination would be. Despite the amount of AI that were controlling the city, she still needed a council of sorts. As she was showing the elders around the city, they were shocked by the size and advanced technology. The weapons, armor, and training manuals that Shiro had shown them were extremely precious, and the fact that she could actually mass-produce them was a blessing. On top of this, what she had shown them was just the surface of everything the city had to offer. Once they digested this information, she'll have AI teach them more. After a while, they should be able to act as a proper command center that will relay information to her during battle. While she could micromanage the information by multitasking, it would be suicide to do so against the queens, since they're not weak enough for her to face them with half of her attention. Each of their attacks required her full focus to be dodged, so she could not afford the leisure of focusing on a different task. That way, they could report any changes to her during battle, and she'll be able to act accordingly. While Shiro was showing the elders around, both Nantien and Isilia were also doing their own research on the city, as there were facilities created just for them. For example, Isilia wanted a library along with labs so that she could continue her experiments. She was also given a house, since she'll be living here with Lyrica once they meet up again. Showing the elders around took them a whole day, since there was simply too much to cover. As for the situation of the spirits moving to the city, it was progressing nicely, as many of them have already finished scanning their houses. With the AI constructing the buildings on the main platform of the fortress, the entire city started to look much more lifelike. Shop buildings were added and schools were being constructed. In regard to the schools, their buildings were much bigger than the one in the spirit capital, since they had to move hastily. Therefore, they couldn't afford to have large schools built. But with the protection of the fortress, proper schools could finally be created. With rumors and news being passed around the community, even those that didn't go to the plaza understood what was going on and claimed scanners for themselves. There were a few stubborn people who had demands and requests. They would say things such as, "If you don't fulfill these basic requirements, I won't move," but Shiro didn't mind, so long as the requirements were not outrageous. If they were just there to test her limits, then she wouldn't care. That was her bottom line. As long as it's sincere, she wouldn't mind extending a helping hand. After a busy day of showing people around, Shiro sat down on her bed and laid on her side, sighing out softly. Shiro closed her eyes and decided to have a short rest. While she may have a lot of stamina, her mental fatigue was building up since she had to attend to quite a few things during the time she was escorting them. Anubis. Thankfully, after the initial introduction, Nantien and Isilia could take her place in showing them around as they had a general idea. "You've been working hard today." Nimue chuckled as she was currently sitting under a tree within Shiro's mana realm. Moving everyone to the city and having them adapt is going to take a while. If I was forceful with my methods, I could get them to move within the span of 2 days max, but it wouldn't give them time to adapt. Shiro sighed as she appeared in the mana realm. Hugging Addie, she sat next to Nimue and closed her eyes while stroking Addie's hair. "Do you have the time for a slow move, though? Don't we have quite a few things to sort out, such as Madison's role as the potential queen?" Nimue asked. I also need to reunite Lyrica and Isilia. My plan was to move the fortress to the Demon Continent, but it seems like it'll take a while. I'm sure they don't need me here all the time since the AI will help them with their problems. Everything they need should be prepared, and by the time we've finished with Madison's problem, everyone should have finished moving to the city. Shiro replied, without opening her eyes. Speaking of the city, what does Asheria even mean? Nimue asked curiously. Back in Aria, Asheria had 2 meanings depending on the word you use with it. The first is Asheria Nilua, which means unstoppable fortress. The second is Asheria Yuani, which means fortress utopia. Since this place is supposed to be both a weapon and a safe home for the spirits, Asheria just fit the situation in my mind. Shiro replied. Sounds fancy. Nimue chuckled as Shiro shrugged. A little. Shiro smiled as her breathing became even, and she fell into a light sleep. Seeing this, Nimue shook her head and sighed. Looking at her like this, one wouldn't think that she's the destroyer of common sense. Nimue mused as she watched Addie shuffle out of Shiro's arms before using her lap as a comfy pillow. Resting for a few hours, Shiro yawned slightly before getting up since she had other work to do. She was going to stick around for roughly a week max before returning back to the party. Glancing out of her room, she could see the moving going well as people were becoming familiar with the process. Some of the spirits started to help one another in order to increase the speed, and others were already registering for jobs in the job center. Surprisingly, there were quite a few who wanted to be in the army, which surprised Shiro since she had expected them to enjoy the quiet lifestyle for a bit. However, since they wanted to join, Shiro would let them, and they were given help packs to assist them in getting stronger, such as a dummy, which would adjust itself to your level. Of course, there is a limit to how strong the dummy was, but at higher levels, they'd be allowed to use skills so that they could hone their senses during combat. She hasn't revealed the guns, mech suits, and others just yet, since throwing too much at them would make things a little overwhelming. Once they've gotten some training, she'll slowly introduce the guns for them. Making a few final checks, she called both Nantian and Isilia to her room. Once they arrived, Shiro had them sit down by the table. Since everything is moving as planned, I'll be stepping out for a bit since the party needs help. Isilia, are you able to join me since it's about time you met Lyrica again? Nantian, are you able to stay around to supervise just in case? Plus, I want you to familiarize yourself with the fortress as much as possible, Shiro asked as Nantian nodded his head. Sure, I don't mind staying around for a while. It's not like I have anything else I need to do. I can just gain EXP by meditating. Nantian smiled, since this was the benefit of being able to cultivate through circulating his mana. While the gains weren't as much as what he could get by slaughtering his way through hordes of enemies, it was good enough for now. That's perfect then. What about you, Isilia? Shiro smiled and turned to her friend. Staying silent for a moment, Isilia sighed. Sure, I have to see her eventually. I'm sure it'll go fine. Shiro grinned, since she knew that Lyrica treasured her family. Even so, Isilia was worried since she had neglected her child for so long, even though she's technically still alive. Giving Nantian a few instructions on what he should familiarize himself with, Shiro and Isilia made their way to the teleport shrine. Pulling out her phone, Shiro contacted the party for the first time in a while. Hi, Shiro. Just going to blow some dust off this chat. How is my favorite party doing? Lyrica. Shiro. It's been good. Have you finished with the anchors? Shiro. Yep. Got some bonuses during my little trip, too. I've mastered some of the powers that come with me becoming a demigod. Arim. I've noticed. This energy is quite helpful in empowering my spells. Yin. There's better conversion between food intake and energy output. Lysandra. Mom? Yin's managed to make a spell where she can eat during a battlefield and launch spells proportionate to how much she eats. The rift is full of food, and it's disgusting whenever we enter. We might accidentally step in one if we're not careful. Yin. That's because you girls don't know where to stand. I'm still upset that you stood in the pie that I was saving. Reading the chat. Shiro's smile twitched furiously hearing that Yin is storing food in the rift. The life-saving skill that had protected her was actually used as a secondary fridge. Shiro. Yin. The rift is supposed to save your life, not store food. Yin. But food is my life, so technically it's still saving my life. Shiro. Setting that aside, I've heard a few good rumors about you lot. You seem to be making a name for yourself. Chenyu. We did try to be low-key, but a few events unfolded and we were forced to fight. Shiro. Oh? What happened? Madison. We might have pissed off one of the government officials and started a war against them. In our defense, his son was very perverted and tried to lay a hand on us. In retaliation, we cut off his head. Shiro. I see. Shame I couldn't be there, otherwise I would have just given his soul to my warden so that he could torture it. Madison. I hate the fact that you're not even kidding when you say that either. Oh, I'm Shiro. Well, it's the truth, so no need to joke, no? Madison. I know. That's the worst part. Sylvia. Speaking of rumors, I seem to have heard something about a goddess saving New York with a large-scale healing spell which gave them EXP and stats for a week long. Shiro. Ah, yeah, I was responsible for that. Basically, I wanted to help my parents a bit and merged a world-class spell with grace. It would be creepy to imagine souls that heal, so I used angels instead. The results were quite nice. It wasn't another world-class spell, but I did get a powerful city-scale support skill instead. While it might not be like Grace's potential, since I could mass heal so long as there are more than 100 people in the party, it's unconditional healing towards all I determine as an ally. Sylvia. And this is why I'm considering changing class haze. Forget it. At least you can't continuously buff. Once you can, I might literally just reset and start again. Shiro. Ah, don't worry about it. The heal spell has a long cooldown, so I can't use it often. It does revive the dead, so naturally the requirements are stringent. Sylvia. Oh? What kind of requirements are they? Shiro. Basically, it takes all my mana, the full charge of True Spirit Nature, and the cooldown of this spell is 2 weeks. True Spirit Nature is very handy since it grants me better control over ice and souls, and the recharge rate is slow, so using this spell is quite costly. Sylvia: that is rather costly, but with your mana regen, wouldn't that mana come back quite quickly? Shiro: mana isn't the problem, it's the fact that I lose True Spirit Nature for a while. Lyrica: so, in essence, your new skill is like an emergency one that can only be used if you don't use True Spirit Nature. Shiro: and I use True Spirit Nature quite often, so it's going to be hard to use this skill with a 2-week cooldown and high requirements. Madison: so is there any reason you're messaging in this chat? You don't message often unless you need something. Shiro: you're not wrong. I'm basically looking to regroup the party for a bit and deal with Madison's heritage since we have the time now. I have also found a way for multiple queens to stay alive at the end of the age, so we don't need to worry about the fact that both me and Madison are both queens. Rano BTC is Lyrica: really? That's good news. Shiro: yep. I also have a guest with me that I want you to meet, Lyrica. Lyrica: oh? Who is it? Shiro: I'll tell you later, but for now, where should we meet up? Madison: do you know the border city Rahyu that connects the front lines to the Demon Continent? We'll meet up there since we can start the journey to the Demon Continent immediately. Shiro: sure, I'll have to hire someone to take me to Rahyu then. I don't have a checkpoint. Lyrica: how long do you think it'll take then? Shiro: 1 or 2 days at most. 3 if I have to manually fly there. Lyrica: all right, see you in 2 or 3 days, I suppose. Shiro: man, see you. Closing her phone, Shiro glanced at Isilia. We've got around 2 to 3 days to get to a place called Rahyu. There we'll find the party and you can meet Lyrica there too. The last time I saw her, she was already an apprentice sword saintess. Maybe she would have reached tier 5 by now. Shiro chuckled. She's already almost at tier 5 stage, huh? Isilia smiled softly since not many could break past the boundary between tier 4 and 5, since it requires the adventurer to rely on themselves more so than ever. Teleporting away from the resort island for now, Shiro and Isilia arrived in Shanghai and sought out the guild. Posting requests for Rahyu, they weren't surprised to see that there were quite a few people at the checkpoint, since it was a frontline city where many could earn quite a bit of money. Teleporting to Rahyu, Shiro and Isilia rested at a hotel for now, since they were waiting for the rest of the party to arrive. Sitting on the hotel bed, Isilia was shuffling around in nervousness. Are you sure Lyrica won't hate me? Isilia asked, as Shiro chuckled and rolled her eyes. I'm sure it'll be fine. You worry too much. Do you want me to hug you to sleep like old times? Shiro grinned and opened her arms. Whatever. Isilia rolled her eyes before standing up. Since Shiro had already showered and washed up, it was her turn. Laying in her bed, Shiro closed her eyes and slept soundlessly. Once Isilia had finished washing up, she saw this and sighed softly while still feeling nervous in her heart. Just as she lay down on the bed, she felt Shiro hug her from behind. Just relax for now. I want to be the big spoon this time since the last time I was the little spoon. Shiro said, as the last time they had camped together, she was being hugged by Isilia rather than the other way around. You still remember that? It's been a while. Though I suppose with your memory it's only natural. As if I'd forget the night before what happened. Shiro rolled her eyes as the two slept soundlessly. The next morning, Shiro received a text saying that they had arrived. Waking up properly, she turned to Isilia. They've arrived. Let's set off now. Ugh. Why are they so fast? I thought I had to wait another day or so. Isilia sighed since she didn't have enough time to prepare herself. Either you come or I just teleport you next to me when I meet them. Shiro shrugged. Cuff! Fine, I'll come. If Shiro had teleported her while she was on the toilet, it would be rather embarrassing. Waiting for Isilia to get changed, the two made their way towards the teleport shrine. Shiro said that she'll be here with the guest soon. Who do you think she is? Lyrica asked as she glanced back at the party. Well, if it's Shiro, we know that the person must be pretty important for her to bring them to meet us. You think it's someone to do with the spirits? Madison asked curiously. Who knows? Lyrica shrugged. Just as they were about to leave the teleport shrine, they saw Shiro flicker near them. Yo, it's been a while. Shiro smiled, but when she saw their level, her smile widened since they have all succeeded in achieving Tier 5. They were now amongst the strongest within the world in the short span of a single year, if one did not include the time in the dungeons. Seeing Shiro, Lyrica was about to call out to her when she noticed a nervous elf beside her. Despite never having seen this elf before, she couldn't help but feel a little weird seeing her. Seems like you girls have been working hard. All of. You have reached Tier 5, and you, Lyrica, have become the Elven Sword Saintess. Shiro smiled as Lyrica had finally accomplished what she had sought out to do. Hearing Shiro's compliment, Lyrica smiled happily. Man, it was hard, but I finally did it. So far, the mastery I have over other weapons, including ones with blades, have increased. I have a bonded weapon as well as a subspace where I can store powerful weapons for me to use, and it'll clone the weapon. When I fight, I'll be able to summon a clone of that weapon to assist me. Of course, the clone is a little weaker than the original, but it's still good enough, Lyrica explained while summoning a few blades and dismissing them. That's pretty handy in terms of weapon efficiency. What about the rest of you? Shiro asked while glancing towards the rest of the party. Seeing their titles, she knew a general idea of their class, but she wanted to hear them say it so that she could confirm her guess. Yin LVL 264, Divine Rift Devourer. Lysandra LVL 365, Divine Judge. Lyrica LVL 280, Elven Sword Saintess. Aram LVL 275, Divine Caster. Sylvia LVL 310, Sage of Life. Chen Yu LVL 270, Phantom Scythe. Madison LVL 275, Demoness of War. Helion LVL 280, Hephaestus' successor. Hearing this, the party nodded their heads, since they didn't mind. If Shiro asked them while their guest was nearby, it meant that she was trusted. Watching Shiro activate a silencing barrier so that the people outside couldn't hear, the party nodded at one another. I can eat everything and anything so long as it has mana and I can reuse it. Yin grinned as Shiro nodded her head. I kind of figured, considering that you have kept Devourer in your class. Shiro chuckled. My power is increased depending on your subconscious tolerance towards types of people, monsters, and so on. If you dislike a certain type of person, my power against them is tripled. I'm a judge using your standards as the compass. Lysandra replied with a small smile. Oh, so if I didn't like Yin, your power would triple against her? Shiro raised her eyebrow as Yin widened her eyes. How can you not like me, though? Did you forget how much I helped? Yin pouted as Shiro shrugged. It's just so that your sister can rein in your appetite. Shiro smirked. Of course, it was just a joke. She couldn't hate Yin since she was her daughter after all. Rangob Perseus. Who's next? If no one's going to volunteer, I guess I'll go next. Aram asked. We're not exactly racing here, so take your time. Sylvia chuckled. Well, mine is pretty simple, so I wanted to get it out of the way. All my spells are enhanced with divine energy thanks to a certain demigod, and my focus is on gravity. I think if I kept increasing my knowledge on gravity, I should be able to transition to controlling forces in this world, such as kinetic force. Aram shrugged. That should be achievable once you reach Tier 6, but I'll be honest, this is the first time I've seen someone take gravity magic this far. Shiro smiled as Aram shrugged. I have to take it this far in order to actually keep up with the crazy things that you do. True. Shiro nodded her head, since she had recently constructed a large fortress after all. The poor girls don't know about it just yet either. Nimue sighed while glancing at Madison and Arim with pity. Don't spoil the fun surprise now. Shiro chuckled in her mind before looking towards their healer, Sylvia. So then, Sage of Life, care to tell us what you can do? Shiro asked with a smile. Don't call me the Sage of Life when I can't even mass revive at your scale. Sylvia sighed. You said at my scale so you can still mass revive, no? Hearing this, Sylvia smiled since Shiro saw through her. Che, fine. Basically, I can revive up to 100 people at once, but that's my limit. Any more than 100, and I'll have to choose who I don't revive. My buffs have also evolved, and I have a buff where it completely stops you from taking damage for the next few moments. Sylvia smiled, feeling victorious about the fact that her buffs have not been surpassed by Shiro. That's very handy with Madison, since I have a buff where it allows me to choose who takes damage and how it is spread out. If you use your buff with Madison, it'll negate all the damage that everyone will take. Shiro smiled. What about you, Chen? My class lets me instantly kill someone as long as certain requirements are fulfilled. Everyone has a certain amount of death marks on their body, and if I can strike them all, they'll die. The stronger you are, the harder it is to hit the death marks, and the tougher they are. Of course, there are special skills needed to be activated before I can actually instant kill, but I can passively see death marks if I wanted to. Chen Yu replied as Shiro raised her eyebrow in surprise, since this was the first time she had heard of something like this. Interesting. Just out of curiosity, how many death marks do I have? Shiro asked, since she was curious about how strong she was against Chen Yu. Closing his eyes, the whites started to darken before turning black completely. Looking at Shiro, once more, Chen Yu widened his eyes in surprise before sighing and shaking his head. It'd be too difficult to kill you even if I used everything. There are so many death marks all around your body, and they're all rather tough to pierce. Killing you is way too hard of a task. Chen Yu shrugged his shoulders as his eyes returned to normal. That's good to know. If I was easy to kill, it'd be rather concerning. Shiro smiled. For the last two of the party, Miss, I want to be normal is now the demoness of war, and our blacksmith is Hephaestus' successor. Why don't you tell me a bit about your class? Shiro chuckled. I basically can use all my berserk skills on a shorter cooldown and no backlash. Like before, I have two forms, I guess, attack and defense. When I'm attacking, I don't take as much damage. When I'm defending, I reflect a bunch of damage. Also, I've given up now. I don't think normal is possible anymore. I have to either become the ruler of demons, or I die. Madison scratched her hair in annoyance. Poor girl. When you win, you should help her get a normal life, or something close to that, Nimue said as Shiro nodded her head. I'll keep that in mind. Well, I can't say much about being normal anymore, but I can definitely say that the power of using berserk skills without backlash is one of the craziest things I have heard. Plus, you said that they were on a shorter cooldown, didn't you? You can use that short cooldown to trick a few people if you want. Have them think that they should go all out, then just leave and fight them again when your berserk skill comes. Off cooldown. Shiro chuckled, since she could already picture it now. They'll be waiting to strike her when she's suffering from backlash, but that wait will be fruitless. She had to admit that she would be against fighting Madison as well if she was an enemy. The power of berserk skills wasn't one to underestimate, since many of them would give powerful skills as well. With Madison's class, those skills that she receives will be insane. Sigh. I know, but what can I do? Madison shrugged with a sigh. What about you, Helion? What can you do now? Shiro asked as Helion smiled. As a passive of my class, as long as I can study a certain piece of armor or weapon for an extended amount of time, I can improve it to the next grade, provided that there is room for improvement with the material. If the material is brought to its limits, it will not rank up. Hearing this, Shiro widened her eyes as this was the most outrageous thing she had heard all her life. If she was to provide him with rainbow grade equipment, there was a chance that he could bring it to the unknown next grade. Wait, so you're telling me that as long as the material could be improved, you can bring it to the next grade? Shiro asked curiously. Meh, but there are other requirements, such as how much I know about it and how powerful it can be. If I'm not strong enough to reforge the item, then nothing would change. Helion shrugged his shoulders. Regardless, that's still amazing considering the fact that you can just upgrade anything so long as you have the required knowledge. Shiro praised as Helion scratched his hair in embarrassment. Why don't you introduce yourself now, or do you want to talk privately with Lyrica first? Shiro glanced towards Acelia, who fidgeted with nervousness. If possible, can I talk with Lyrica in private first? Acelia asked as Lyrica tilted her head and glanced at Shiro. It's up to Lyrica, since it's something the two of you need to talk over. We can go to the hotel and I'll set down a few barriers so that others can't hear. Shiro smiled as Lyrica thought about it for a moment before nodding her head. Sure, I don't mind that. Seeing that Lyrica agreed, Acelia sighed in relief. Bringing the party back to the hotel, Shiro and the rest of the group sat by the restaurant section while Lyrica and Acelia talked in the room. So are you able to tell us who she is, Shiro? Madison asked out of curiosity. It's up to her if she wants to tell you, but I can say that she's a friend of mine. Shiro chuckled. Fair enough, Madison shrugged. Setting that aside for now, do you know how the selection process is going to work in detail, or do you not know? The only information we got from it was what they told us last time? Shiro asked. Nah, I haven't got anything like that just yet. I think they're probably going to tell me once I arrive there or something. Madison sighed while eating some toast. Sounds logical. Shiro nodded her head since the selection process could be changed at any moment, so nothing is certain just yet. Oh, what about you? Have you finished doing all the things you need for the anchor? Sylvia asked. Man, I have. The elders are helping the spirits move to their new home right now. Since it's going to take a while, I had Nantien sit back and assist them so that they could speed it up. We needed to deal with Madison's case anyway, so it was a good time to step out for now. They're not in any immediate danger, and even if they are, the defensive systems should take care of it. Shiro chuckled. And speaking of the anchor, both Addie and Nimue have evolved thanks to me being able to properly use divine energy. After saying this, Shiro summoned both Addie and Nimue out as Addie sat on her lap and gave the party a wave. Seeing him, both Yin and Lysandra felt their hearts being pierced by how cute Addie was. As for the rest of the party, they were surprised at how fast Addie grew up. But when they thought about how Shiro was essentially less than a year old, ignoring dungeon time, it didn't shock them that much anymore. Big sis Yin, big sis Lisa. Addie reached out towards the two since he hadn't seen them in a while. Bottom! Feeling as though another arrow had just struck their heart, the two played around with Addie while Shiro and Nimue were talking with the rest of the party. On Obez during this, Shiro found out that most of their schedule was comprised of clearing high-level dungeons, raids, and danger zones where adventurers were said to have disappeared without reporting anything back. Most of them were Cases of high-level monsters roaming the place, but when they found out that they were in a domain, they would retreat since they understood that fighting a queen was suicide right now. They weren't at Shiro's standard just yet, so trying to kill a queen or her guard was simply impossible. Of course, they would report the location back to the guild, and so far they've helped uncover 4 anchors. They weren't sure if they were main anchors or branch anchors, but approaching it to check was not an option. With the 4 danger zones marked out, adventurers were more wary when they ventured out since they could be unlucky and stumble across a death trap. In addition to this, with the queens building up forces around the world, there had been a few small skirmishes between factions, but they weren't anything serious. So far, no one had been killed yet, but the damages that they have caused are starting to increase. They believe that there is a chance for war before the New Age, with how things were progressing, but the queens aren't dumb. Starting a war early, before the New Age begins, would set them back, so they'll avoid war for now if they can. As the party were discussing recent news, they saw both Lyrica and Isilia return. Lyrica looked as though she had cried for a bit since her eyes were red around the corners. But seeing as how she was holding Isilia's arm, Shiro could tell that the talk went well. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. You may have known me as Talia Faiha, but I am Isilia, Lyrica's mother, who should have died a while ago, and I am also Shiro's friend from Aria. Due to a few special circumstances, I am now working with Shiro. Isilia introduced herself as the party widened their eyes in surprise. They knew that Lyrica's mother had died, and that in her past life, Shiro was forced to kill Isilia. But seeing the elf in front of them, they couldn't believe that she was now alive and kicking. "Wait, she's your mother?" Madison asked in surprise, as Lyrica nodded her head with a small smile. Seeing Lyrica's smile, Madison could tell that Lyrica was really happy that one of her family was alive. Sure, she had her other relatives back in the elven capital, but it wasn't the same as having her mother or father back. While the party was happy for Lyrica, Shiro glanced over at Isilia. "I told you she wouldn't hate you now, didn't I?" Shiro grinned. Isilia nodded her head with a smile since she was grateful that her daughter could still accept her. "Now that you two have reunited, what are your plans?" Shiro asked. "We're going to deal with your friend's heritage, then sort things out in the spirit capital. We can't leave the elves to fend for themselves after all. Plus, while I'm the elven queen of Aria, it kind of extends to this world too once the new age begins since Aria will be merged," Isilia replied as Shiro nodded her head. "There's a platform that can be ready for your country. It'll take a while before it is big enough, but I should be able to provide decent accommodation for the time being. Plus, I'm thinking of helping Nantian and Lijian move their sect over to the city too. With the way they like to work things, they can act as a scouting unit using drones rather than people when possible, so that we can save on manpower," Shiro offered. "I'll keep that in mind. But at the rate that this is going, you'll probably make a planet out of your nanobots. With how many cities and countries you're planning to integrate?" Isilia chuckled. "Don't give me ideas now. Nimue might flip a table at me if I attempt that." Shiro laughed. As the party relaxed for a while, they prepared to make a trip to the demon continent. During this, Isilia also offered to help Lyrica with her class as the Blade Saintess, since she was the only one who knew of the deeper secrets. Plus, it was also a chance for some bonding between the two. Making a family car so that they could fit everyone in, Shiro was the one driving and promised not to go too fast. That, of course, was a lie, but thankfully, Sylvia was able to buff everyone, so that they didn't feel a thing much to Shiro's disappointment. The skies slowly changed the more they ventured into the demon continent. From the somewhat clear skies at the border, it was slowly dyed a dark red, which had black clouds looming in the distance. There were occasional lower-class demons that tried to attack, but were dispatched quickly with a single flick of the blade. By Lyrica. Since they didn't have any sentience other than to attack everything on sight, and even cannibalizing their own comrades, they didn't have any sympathy for them. Soon, signs of humans decreased as they were now quite deep into demon territory. Activating an item that she had received to communicate with the demons, Madison called for their escorts, which soon arrived. Stepping out of the car, they could see 2 demon nobles that they had met last time. Akog, the demonic duke, and Bolgrad, the demonic marquis. Seeing Madison, both of the demon nobility kneeled on one knee. "Princess, you have returned," Akog greeted, as Madison sighed since she needed to get used to it. "Stand up and tell us what's been happening so far, I guess. I don't suppose the selection process has begun yet?" Madison asked. "Since if they started late, it might be harder to win." "There hasn't been any signs of starting yet, which is good news. We don't know if it will change, but if things continue as they are, it will either start at the start of the new age or just before, so that we have a queen to lead us." Akog replied. "I see. Are you able to tell us more about the other candidates?" "Then, how many there are and what they're like in terms of power?" Madison asked as Akog nodded his head. "We will talk while we escort you back to your rightful territory. It may be a little dull. I do apologize, but it has been hard to maintain the territory without a prince or princess. Akog sighed. Don't mind it. Madison waved her hand dismissively as Akog nodded his head. Sitting in the car, Shiro made 2 extra seats at the front for Akog and Bolgrad so that they could show them the way to the territory. While that was happening, they would also explain the current situation to them. Right now, we have a total of 67 queen candidates and 5 kind candidates. Despite the large number, there are only a few noteworthy ones. Naturally, you are included within the 67 queen candidates. Each of the candidates act in accordance to their demon god, with ours being the demon god Markon. We are currently ranked last, I suppose, since our candidates have been killed, but with your current strength, I'd say we rank roughly in the 50s or 40s. Akog explained. That low? Madison frowned. Don't underestimate Queen's Madi. Even I lost control of my body when fighting against a weakened one. If it wasn't for Nantien, I might have lost. Plus, there was another empress that needed me, Isilia. Nantien and Li Jian to team up to even push back. The strength of queens is much higher than average. You're just at the doorstep right now. Honestly, I had expected you to be ranked around the 60s rather than 40s or 50s. Shiro cut in since they needed to know that queens weren't to be underestimated. Even if they were weak, they could turn things on their heads with a single skill. Hearing that Shiro was restrained and might have even lost without backup, the party was shocked since Shiro had things under control most of the time. Especially with her recent upgrades, harming her seemed rather difficult, and yet she casually mentioned 2 queens that pushed her close to the limit when they were weakened. Her Highness is correct. Each of the queens are masters of their title. For example, trying to defeat a Queen of Flames with fire is basically stupidity. Akog shook his head. Ah, right. Speaking of that Fire Queen, I've already eliminated her from this competition. She doesn't have an anchor anymore, and she can't come back for the new age, Shiro said, as the 2 demons immediately looked at her in surprise. I also eliminated the Vampiric Queen, too. They were harming the spirit race, so I had to deal with her. Suffering another shock, the 2 couldn't believe that Shiro already eliminated 2 queens. Shouldn't they have guards with them? Akog asked with disbelief. The Vampiric Queen did, and Nantien helped me stall them while I killed her. As for the Fire Queen, we were lucky to find her before she could actually do anything. Plus, she was an old acquaintance of mine, so I made sure that she couldn't come back. Shiro smiled darkly as the 2 demons felt shivers down their spine. Who the hell is the real demon here? Why does she feel so much worse than us? Bolgrad thought with a twitching smile. Anyways, enough about that. Continue what you were saying. Shiro chuckled. Ah, right. Most of the queens are already allied with the higher-ranking individuals. Since they know that their chances of victory is low, they might as well serve as a vassal and gain some benefits. Naturally, the demon gods are fine with that since there is a hierarchy among them as well. After the last garden, the ranks are ready for another reshuffling since the top-ranked demon gods have powerful candidates all the time. Ryobi Stsas. The main enemy you need to defeat is the current estimated rank 1 king candidate, Gnostic. His powers are unfathomable as no one understands what's happening when he fights. Whenever he touches something, it breaks apart into ash. Some have tried to attack him from a distance, but it's no use. It doesn't matter if he touches a being, item or spell, they are all reduced to ash. Naturally, this isn't his only weapon either, but no one has forced him to use anything else. Akog sighed. Sounds like a tough enemy. What level is he? Shiro asked. 500. They say he's on the verge of breaking through to tier 6. That's problematic. Speaking of which, what ranks is Demon God Varen? And if I kill the candidate, does that mean he can't descend? Shiro questioned. Since she pissed off Varan, she might as well try to deal with him as soon as possible. Demon God Varen's candidate is ranked 8th, so naturally he's ranked 8 as well, Akog replied. I see. Killing the rank 8 candidate is going to be hard. Shiro sighed as the 2 demons just ignored the fact that she was thinking about killing. The candidates with every sentence, she says. As for the second part of your question, if you kill the candidates, the lower-ranked demon gods will not be able to materialize. As for the higher-ranked gods like Varen, they can, but they'll be severely weakened. That'll do, I suppose. If I can reach tier 6 by the start of the new age, I might be able to deal with Varan if he's weakened, Shiro muttered. Once again, the 2 decided to ignore the fact that she was musing about killing a demon god for their own mental safety and turned to Madison. My princess, to better prepare yourself for the new age, you'll need to focus on bolstering our ranks as well as acquiring territory so that our influence grows. Once we become big enough, we'll have powerful demons seek us out, and that will form the basic army to stand against the other candidates. You may be wondering why we demons keep trying to invade human territory, and this is the reason. Most of the easy-to-obtain territory is already acquired. hence why most of us have set our eyes towards the human lands. Naturally, our factions hasn't been able to do that since the moment we try. We'll just be eliminated by the others competing for the land, Akog explained as the party furrowed their brows. So, if Madison gets land, would it be recognized by the system? Shiro asked. Yes. Once she has a firm hold over the land, the system will recognize it as demon territory and the surroundings will change to suit us demons better, such as darkened skies. Akog pointed out the window at the dark red sky. I'm guessing the chances of succeeding the queen role is determined by everything I do from now on, such as territory, Madison asked, just to make sure. That is correct to a certain degree. We're not sure of the final requirements just yet, but you are not far off. Akog nodded his head. Seems like you have your work cut out for you, Princess? Shiro chuckled while glancing back at Madison. Ugh. I don't need you to call me Princess. I don't even know if we have enough manpower to capture anything, never. Mind keeping a hold on it. Madison sighed. And that's why we're here to help you with it. Most of us are already strong on our own, so I'm sure we can make something work when we're in a group. Lyrica smiled as Madison nodded her head. I can provide us with a few soldiers and weapons from the spirit race if the push comes to shove, but I'll need to see if the army is ready first, Shiro reminded. Man. Nodding her head, Madison was happy that she had met everyone here. If not for them, she might become a brainless woman who only wants to serve the demon king if he ascends. The throne. That was the worst-case scenario that she wanted to avoid at all cost.